I didn't get fired in a dramatic way. No raised voices, no security escort him out, seen in front of everyone. Just a calendar invite called Quick Touchpoint, dropped into my morning like spam. I showed up anyway because that's what you do when you've spent years training yourself to stay calm in corporate rooms. HR was already there, not my HR rep. Someone I'd never seen before wearing that neutral smile that isn't warmth. It's procedure. My manager Darren was sitting too, hands folded like he was at a funeral. On the table, a thin folder and a small black badge reader case. I remember the detail that still makes my stomach tighten. HR had a pen placed exactly on top of the packet, like a set piece. "Thanks for coming," the HR woman said. "This is part of a broader organizational restructuring." I didn't react. I just listened. She slid the folder toward me. The first page was standard language. Position elimination, effective immediately. Severance contingent upon signature. The usual corporate anesthesia. I glanced at Darren, expecting him to at least look uncomfortable. He didn't. He stared at the tabletop like he was reading invisible instructions. "I'm being eliminated," I said, more to confirm the words than to ask a question. "Yes," HR replied. "It's not performance-related." That sentence is always supposed to soften the blow. Like the universe cares whether you're fired for cause or erased for convenience. I flipped to the last page and saw the line that bothered me most. Not the severance amount. Not the non-disparagement. Not even the waiver. The line that said I would cooperate reasonably with transition, as requested. Requested by whom, exactly, if my badge was about to die? I looked up. I'm currently the named implementation lead on the Greystone contract. It's live. Who takes that? HR's smile didn't change, but her eyes shifted, half a second to Darren. "We have coverage," she said. Darren cleared his throat like he'd been waiting for his cue. "We'll handle it." That was the moment something felt off. Not because they didn't have a plan, companies rarely do, but because Darren sounded rehearsed, like someone had told him, "Don't add details. Don't promise anything. Don't create obligations." I didn't argue. Arguing in that room is like yelling at an elevator. It doesn't change where it's going. "I'm not signing anything on the spot," I said. "I'll review it." HR nodded as if I'd asked for extra napkins. "Of course. We'll email you the packet as well." Then she tapped the small black case. "Before we conclude," she said, "we'll need your badge and any company devices." I slid my badge across. The plastic felt stupidly light, like it weighed less than the years I'd given them. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it. The IT guy, also someone I'd never seen before, stood up quietly and opened a laptop like he was taking inventory. He asked for my company-issued phone, my laptop, even the security token I used for certain systems. I handed everything over without drama. But in my head, I was already doing what I always did when something didn't make sense. Building a timeline. HR finished with a practiced closing. Facilities will coordinate retrieval of any personal items from your workspace and have them shipped to your address on file. "Shipped?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "Standard process." Darren finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, and for a second I saw something human in them. He leaned slightly forward, barely moving his lips, and said so quietly I almost wondered if I imagined it. "Just don't email anyone." That was not advice for my well-being. That was fear. I stood up, nodded once, and walked out without letting my face do anything dramatic. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crack in their room. In the hallway, my phone buzzed again. This time I checked it. A text from an unknown number. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." No signature, no name, just that. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Outside, the sky looked like it always did. Cars moved, people laughed. The world didn't pause because my life just got shoved into a folder. I drove home in silence, repeating the words position elimination like they meant something objective and clean. That night, I did what most men do when they're trying not to collapse. I pretended I was fine. I cooked something I barely tasted. I folded laundry I didn't need to fold. I made lists in my head: who I'd call, what I'd cancel, how long my savings would last. Then, around 9:17 p.m., my personal email pinged, a client address I recognized immediately. Gray Stone, subject line, quick confirmation. My chest tightened before I even opened it. The message was short, polite, deadly. Hi, just confirming you're still the named implementation lead for the Q4 rollout. We have auditors on site Monday and need the escalation path in writing. I read it twice, then a third time, slower, like the words would change if I stared hard enough. They said they had coverage. They said they'd handle it. But Greystone was emailing me, not my manager, not the generic support alias, not the team. Me, I didn't respond. Not yet. I took a screenshot, saved it, created a folder in my inbox called Exit, and dropped it in like evidence. Then I checked my old work calendar out of habit. My access was already gone. I couldn't see anything. My company apps were signed out. My MFA prompt looped and failed, which meant Greystone wasn't reaching me through my company channels anymore. They were reaching me because someone, either through negligence or desperation, had failed to update the one place that mattered: the contract itself. I sat on my couch, phone in hand, and felt the first real wave hit. Not sadness, not anger. The cold, focused feeling you get when you realize this isn't just unemployment. This is exposure. 2 days later, the box arrived. Brown cardboard, too much tape, a shipping label with my name, my address, and the company's return address printed cleanly like nothing was wrong. I carried it inside and set it on the kitchen table. For a long minute, I just stared at it, because there's something humiliating about seeing your career reduced to whatever fits inside corrugated cardboard. I cut the tape. Inside, bubble wrap, a handful of desk junk, my cheap framed photo from a team event, a stress ball with the company logo, my coffee mug. They'd even thrown in the stupid little coin I kept in my top drawer, the one my father gave me years ago when I got my first real job. A coin that meant absolutely nothing to anyone else, and somehow survived every reorg because I never let it out of my sight, except I had, and then I saw it. A sealed envelope, heavier than the rest, wedged under a stack of my notepads like it had been hidden there on purpose. Stamped in bold block letters, privileged and confidential, audit committee only. My throat went dry because I knew what that meant. I'd seen that stamp before. On documents you don't forward, don't photocopy, don't even leave unattended. And taped across the flap was a second label, printed clean. To be opened by my name. Not HR's, not legal's, not Darren's, mine. I didn't open it. I didn't even touch the seal. I just took my phone out, turned on the camera, and started documenting every angle. Front, back, stamps, labels. Because in that moment, I understood something that made my skin crawl. They didn't accidentally ship me my belongings. They shipped me a problem. And if I was holding it, they were going to make sure I looked like the one who stole it. I didn't sleep much after that box arrived. Not because I was spiraling, because my brain wouldn't stop running scenarios. I kept seeing the envelope in my mind like a flashing hazard sign. Privileged and confidential. Audit committee only. And my name printed on a label like someone wanted it to look intentional. So I did the only thing that made sense. I treated it like evidence, not like a mistake. I put the envelope back exactly where it had been in the box. Took photos again, wide shots, close-ups, the seal, the stamp, my name, the shipping label on the cardboard. Then I slid the envelope into a clear plastic document sleeve and locked it in a small fire safe I'd bought years ago for passports and tax records. I didn't open it. I didn't even breathe on the seal. Then I waited to see what they would do. It took less than 2 hours. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another call, and another. Then an email hit my personal inbox from an address I recognized. HR, but not the woman from the meeting. Subject: Return of company property. The message was written like a template someone copied and pasted without thinking. Per your separation agreement and company policy, you are required to return all company property immediately. Please confirm availability today for pickup. No inventory list, no specifics, no mention of what they actually cared about. That told me everything. I replied with 3 sentences, as calm as I could make them. Please provide an itemized list of the property you believe is outstanding. Confirm whether you are requesting pickup by a bonded courier with chain of custody documentation. Confirm this request is authorized by the company's legal department. 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. Same unknown number. This time I answered, a man's voice, tight, impatient, like he'd been forced to make a call he didn't want on record. Ethan, we need you to cooperate here. I didn't correct him that my name wasn't Ethan. I also didn't help him by asking who he was. I've already responded in writing, I said. We don't have time for this. You have company materials that need to be returned today. What materials? I asked. A pause. The kind of pause that isn't confusion. It's a person calculating how to threaten you without admitting what they're threatening you about. You know exactly what I mean, he said. No, I replied. If you want something from me, you can tell me what it is. In writing. His voice sharpened. If you don't return it, we'll escalate. I could hear the trap being built in real time. The word "it" hanging in the air like bait. Escalate to who? I asked. Another pause. Then he said the one line that made my skin go cold. Security can come to your residence. There it was, intimidation dressed as policy. I exhaled slowly. If anyone shows up at my home, I'm calling the police. If your legal department has a request, they can send it. Otherwise, stop contacting me. I hung up, and then silence, the kind that means someone is now arguing in a room without you. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the Greystone email again. Auditors on site Monday. Escalation path in writing. They didn't email Darren. They didn't email the team. They emailed me, which meant even if my badge was dead, my name was still alive in the one place that mattered. I opened a notepad and wrote down the facts like a checklist. Terminated. Effective immediately. Told. Coverage is handled. Client directly asks me for confirmation. Company ships me a sealed audit committee envelope with my name on it. HR demands immediate return but refuses to specify items. There was only one logical conclusion. Whatever was inside that envelope intersected with why I was removed. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I wasn't going to be the easiest person to frame. I called an employment attorney I'd met once at a professional event. Not a friend, not a miracle worker, just someone whose job was to recognize corporate patterns before they became disasters. When he picked up, I didn't tell him a dramatic story. I gave him the timeline clean and factual, like I was reporting an incident. He stopped me at the envelope stamp. Don't open it, he said immediately. I haven't, I replied. Good. Photograph everything. Keep the seal intact and stop taking calls. If it's privileged, the way it got to you matters. The way you handle it matters even more. I felt a small release in my chest. Not relief, exactly. More like the moment you realize you're not crazy for being cautious. He asked one question that landed like a hammer. Did they ask for it back in writing and name it specifically? No, I said. They keep saying company materials. Of course they do, he replied. They want it back without creating a record that it existed in your possession through their mistake. He told me to forward him the emails and screenshots. Then he drafted a short response for me. Tight, professional, impossible to twist. I have not opened the envelope. The seal remains intact. I will not relinquish any materials to unauthorized personnel. Any retrieval must be coordinated through legal counsel with documented chain of custody. Further direct contact to me should stop and be routed through counsel. I sent it. 10 minutes later, a new email hit my inbox. This one from a different address, not HR. Legal operations. Subject, urgent, property recovery. 2 sentences. We understand you may have received documents not intended for you. Do not copy, disseminate, or discuss. We will arrange immediate retrieval. No greeting, no signature beyond a first name. But what got me wasn't the tone. It was the phrasing. We understand you may have received? That wasn't a request. That was an admission they were trying very hard not to make. I forwarded it to my attorney and stared at the screen, waiting for the next move. It came from Darren. A text message, first one I'd received from him since the meeting. Please, don't do anything with it. Just let them pick it up. I read it twice. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask how I was handling the layoff. He didn't say, I'm sorry. He went straight to it. I typed one line back. Send me an inventory list of what you think I have, in writing. He didn't respond. Instead, my doorbell camera sent a notification. A man in a plain jacket stood on my porch, holding a clipboard and a padded envelope, looking like a delivery driver who didn't want to be on camera. He knocked once, then again. Then he leaned toward my door like he was about to say something through it. I didn't open. I watched through the app as he pulled out his phone, read something, and walked back to his car. A minute later, I got a final text from the unknown number. We can solve this quietly. Don't force the board into it. My thumb hovered over the screen, because that word, bored, was the first time anyone had slipped and revealed who was actually panicking. And I realized something else, sharp and ugly. They weren't trying to retrieve my laptop or my badge. They were trying to retrieve the story. And if the board was involved already, then whatever was sealed inside that envelope wasn't just embarrassing. It was operational. It was expensive. And someone had decided the safest place to put it was in the box of the man they'd just erased. That night, my attorney called me back. His voice was calmer than mine. They just made a mistake, he said. What kind? I asked. The courier, he replied. He left a receipt image in the email trail. It includes an internal reference number. I swallowed. And that number, he said, matches an audit committee matter code. I didn't speak for a second, because now it wasn't just a scary stamp on an envelope. Now it was traceable, documented, real. And if it was traceable, that meant one more thing. Somewhere inside that company, there was a record showing exactly how that envelope ended up with my name on it. And whoever created that record was the person who couldn't afford for me to open it. The next morning, I drove to my attorney's office with the box in my trunk like it was a live animal. I didn't bring the whole thing upstairs, just the envelope, still inside the plastic sleeve, still sealed, still stamped like a warning. I kept thinking about how insane it was that my life had turned into this. A man in his 30s walking into a downtown building holding a document he wasn't allowed to have because his company couldn't execute a basic offboarding process without turning it into a threat. My attorney met me in a conference room with the blinds half drawn. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He asked the correct question. Any new contact? I slid my phone across the table with the call logs and texts. He scanned them, jaw tightening. They're not trying to retrieve property, he said quietly. They're trying to control timing. Timing of what? He held my gaze for a moment. Whatever's inside there intersects with the reason you were removed. And the faster they get it back, the fewer people have to know it ever left their custody. He motioned to the envelope. Show me the seal. I placed it on the table like a weapon. He leaned in, checked the flap, ran his finger along the tape without lifting it. Still intact, he murmured. Good, I swallowed. So we return it, right? We hand it over and this ends. He sat back. If we hand it to the wrong person, this doesn't end. It becomes their story. He opened a legal pad and wrote 4 bullet points. You didn't request it. They shipped it. They contacted you without specifics. They escalated to intimidation. Then he drew a line under the last point. They're building a narrative, he said. Right now, someone inside that company is preparing to say, "You took something." I felt my stomach drop again, slower this time, more like realization than shock. "So what do we do?" He tapped the envelope. "We do two things at once: protect you and force them into the light." He explained it in plain language, not courtroom drama. If the document was truly privileged and truly misdelivered, the company's lawyers should follow a formal clawback process. That means naming the document, identifying authority, requesting return, and establishing chain of custody. What they were doing instead, calling from unknown numbers, sending couriers without documentation, threatening to show up at my home, wasn't legal strategy. It was panic. Then he said something that made me sit absolutely still. "And because your name is printed as the opener, there's also a possibility this wasn't a mistake. It might have been planted." My throat tightened. Planted by who? He didn't answer immediately. He didn't have to. Darren, legal ops. Someone with access to both exit logistics and audit materials. Someone who knew the box would be treated as harmless personal junk until it was too late. I stared at the envelope and felt something inside me crack. Not like a breakdown, like a shift. The part of me that still wanted to believe this was a clerical error died. I heard my own voice, flat. "So you think they wanted me holding it?" "I think they wanted you touching it," he corrected. "Opening it, forwarding it, reacting to it. Anything that gives them a clean way to point at you." I thought about the first caller using the wrong name, Ethan, like he was reading off a script meant for someone else. "My name's not Ethan," I said out loud, almost to myself. My attorney's eyes flicked up. "Then that's useful." "Useful? How?" "It means they're sloppy," he said, "or they're recycling a template from a prior matter. Either way, it supports your position that you're dealing with a process that's being improvised." He slid his chair back and stood. "Now, before we respond again, we document one more thing." He pulled out his phone and, with my permission, started recording. He narrated calmly. Date, time, my name, the condition of the envelope, the stamp, the label. He zoomed in on the intact seal, then he looked at me. "I want you to hear this clearly," he said, voice steady. "I'm not telling you to read privileged material. I'm telling you we may need to confirm what this is because your name is on it, and they are already implying misconduct." My mouth went dry. "So we open it? In the narrowest way possible," he said. "Enough to identify it. No copying, no scanning, no photos of content. We stop the moment we can describe it." He put on nitrile gloves from a drawer, like we were handling something contaminated. That detail hit me harder than anything else. This wasn't a normal severance situation anymore. This was containment. He positioned the envelope so the camera could see the seal. He used a letter opener to lift the flap with minimal tearing, slow and deliberate. The paper inside didn't slide out like a casual letter. It was thick, stacked. He pulled just the top sheet enough to reveal a heading. Not a full page, just the part that would let us name it. I watched my own breathing on the glass tabletop. The heading read, Audit Committee, Briefing Memo, Greystone Implementation Exposure. Prepared for, Audit Committee, Outside Counsel Distribution, Restricted. Under that, a line that made my vision sharpen. Subject, Transition Risk, Name Lead Status, External Reliance. My attorney stopped. He didn't pull it further. He didn't flip. He slid the paper back in and pressed the flap closed. "We've identified it," he said. I felt the room tilt. Because Greystone wasn't just the client from my email. Greystone was written into an audit committee memo, which meant the thing I'd been terminated out of was now an internal governance issue. And that meant someone had decided my removal wasn't just a staffing choice. It was a liability move. My attorney sealed the envelope inside an evidence bag, signed across the edge, and had me initial it. Chain of custody, even though this wasn't a criminal case. He did it because corporate fights are won by the person who controls the paper trail. Then he drafted a letter, short, firm, and impossible to misinterpret. It went to the company's general counsel address, their legal ops sender, and, this part made my pulse spike, their audit committee chair's corporate alias, which he found through public filings in the company's standard governance format. It stated, I received a sealed envelope via company-arranged shipment of personal items. The envelope appears to be an audit committee document referencing Greystone. The document remains intact, secured, and will be returned only via counsel-to-counsel transfer with documented chain of custody. All direct contact to me is to cease. Any attempt to retrieve the document outside formal, legal channels will be treated as a harassment and spoliation risk. He printed it, signed it, sent it. Then he looked at me and said, now we wait for their next mistake. It took 19 minutes, not an hour, not a day. 19 minutes. A new email arrived from an outside law firm, one of those names you see attached to mergers and disaster cleanups. Subject: Notice of inadvertent disclosure and demand for immediate return. The tone was suddenly different, polished, controlled, official, and tucked inside the legal language was a single line that confirmed everything I needed to know. Please confirm whether you reviewed the Audit Committee briefing memorandum regarding Greystone. My attorney read it twice, then looked at me. They just acknowledged it exists, he said. They just tied it to Greystone. And they just asked the one question they shouldn't ask unless they're terrified you did. I felt something hot rise in my chest. Anger, finally, after days of cold focus. Because in that moment, I understood the shape of the trap. They terminate me, effective immediately. Cut access, tell everyone I'm gone. Then they leave my name in the client's escalation path, so the client keeps reaching for me when things break. Then they ship me an audit committee memo tied to that same client, either through gross incompetence or deliberate placement. Then they pressure me to return it quietly without creating a formal record. And if I do anything wrong, open it at home. Talk to the client, forward the email, they point and say, see? He mishandled privileged material. He's the risk. I wasn't just laid off. I was the shock absorber. My attorney replied to outside counsel with one paragraph, clean and lethal. He confirmed we had secured a sealed audit committee document, that we had not disseminated it, and that return would occur via a scheduled counsel-to-counsel handoff, provided they also confirmed in writing that the document arrived through the company-arranged shipment and that I did not request it. He hit send, then said something that made my throat tighten again. If they confirm that, they can't credibly accuse you of theft. And if they refuse, I asked. He held my gaze. Then the question becomes why. When I left his office, my phone buzzed one more time. It was Greystone again, this time not an email, a voicemail. The client's project director, voice tight and professional. Hey, we're getting conflicting information internally. We were told you declined transition support. If that's not accurate, we need to understand who's accountable before Monday. I stood in the parking garage staring at my screen. They were already trying to paint me as the reason the rollout was at risk. They were already moving the blame outward. And for the first time since the quick touchpoint meeting, I felt the break fully settle into something else. Not despair. Clarity. Because if they were willing to say I declined transition while I was locked out of every system, then they weren't just trying to get the envelope back. They were trying to erase the fact that they'd engineered the exposure in the first place. And now that my attorney had put the audit committee on notice, they were going to have to choose between protecting their story or protecting themselves. By Tuesday morning, it stopped feeling like a messy exit and started feeling like an incident. Not in the dramatic sense, no sirens, no headlines. In the corporate sense, people moving fast, writing less, and suddenly speaking only through lawyers. My attorney forwarded me a copy of the company's outside counsel reply. It was cleaner now. No more courier to your residence. No more vague company materials. Just formal language, polished enough to pretend nothing ugly happened. They proposed a handoff that afternoon, counsel to counsel with a chain of custody receipt. And then buried in the same email, a request that made my blood pressure tick up. Please provide written confirmation that you have not reviewed any portion of the memorandum. My attorney called me immediately. Don't answer that, he said. Why not? It's true, I replied. It's a trap, he said. They're trying to shift this from their misdelivery to your conduct. We'll confirm we didn't disseminate and that the document remains secured. We don't litigate their story for them. I stared at my phone after the call ended, watching the screen dim. I could feel the old instinct in me, the employee instinct, wanting to cooperate, wanting to be reasonable. But that was just the beginning, because while legal was suddenly behaving like legal, someone else inside the company was doing what managers do when they're scared, controlling the narrative with the client. Greystone called again. This time the project director didn't leave a voicemail. He sent a calendar invite to my personal email with no message attached, just a time slot and a title. Escalation. Confirm named lead. The invite list included 2 Greystone people I recognized, and one address I didn't. A generic mailbox. Oddity. My stomach tightened. They weren't just looping me in, they were looping in oversight. Either Greystone had gotten spooked, or someone inside my company had triggered their internal controls. I forwarded the invite to my attorney and didn't accept it. He responded the way you respond when you're trying to keep a client from stepping on a landmine. I'm separated from the company and cannot engage on contract matters. Please contact the company's legal department for your escalation path. It was plain, professional, and, most important, true. 10 minutes later, Darren texted me, not, how are you holding up? Not, I'm sorry. Just, you're making this worse. I stared at it for a long time before replying. Stop contacting me directly. Talk to my attorney. He didn't answer. Instead, my attorney got a call from a blocked number. Outside counsel, suddenly less polished on the phone than they were on email. They need this returned today, the lawyer said. There are implications. My attorney didn't take the bait. It will be returned today under documented transfer, as proposed. We also require written acknowledgement that it was included in company-arranged shipment of personal items. There was a pause. Then the outside lawyer said something that confirmed what I already suspected. That acknowledgement may not be possible. My attorney's voice didn't change. Then your client has a governance problem. After he hung up, he looked at me across the table in his office. They're trying to avoid admitting chain of custody broke on their side, he said, because once they admit that, the audit committee has to ask why and how. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick, not because I wanted them to get in trouble, because I could see the machine turning, and I knew exactly what it did when it needed a scapegoat. Around noon, I got a message from someone I used to trust at work, Maya, an analyst who sat 2 rows behind me and had watched my job become a bottleneck for half the org. She didn't call. She didn't email. She sent one text. Legal hold just went out. Subject line, Greystone. People are freaking out. I stared at her message until the words blurred. A legal hold meant the company had already accepted this as litigation risk. Not HR noise, not a severance cleanup. Real risk. I didn't reply with questions. I replied with one sentence. Do not send me anything else. Protect yourself. That night, I stopped being the hero. I stopped trying to help the company clean up their own mess. I stopped entertaining the idea that if I behaved well, they would behave fairly. I didn't hate them. I just finally understood them. At 3:40 p.m., my attorney and I walked into a conference room at his office. A paralegal laid out a chain of custody form and an evidence bag on the table like this was a lab sample. The envelope sat inside the bag, sealed, initialed across the edge from Part 3, exactly as we'd kept it. Outside counsel arrived with a second person, a younger associate carrying a laptop and a folder. thick enough to be a shield. No one shook my hand. They didn't look at me like I was a former employee. They looked at me like I was a variable. The lead lawyer opened with the same sentence they'd used in writing. "We are here to retrieve a document inadvertently disclosed." My attorney nodded. "We'll complete the transfer once we receive written acknowledgement that it was included in the company-arranged shipment to my client." The lawyer's mouth tightened. "We cannot confirm that wording." "Then we cannot transfer it," my attorney replied, calm as a metronome, "because without that, your client can later claim my client obtained it improperly." The associate shifted uncomfortably. The lead lawyer tried another angle. "We're willing to provide assurance. This is not an accusation." My attorney didn't blink. Assurance is not acknowledgement. Silence stretched, and in that silence I noticed something small and telling. The lead lawyer's pen was uncapped, but he wasn't writing. He was waiting for us to give them a sentence they could carry back as ammunition. My attorney slid a prepared statement across the table. It was short. The document was received sealed within a company-arranged shipment of personal items. It was secured and not disseminated. It will be returned upon written confirmation of the above. Outside counsel didn't sign. Instead, the lead lawyer looked directly at me for the first time. "Did you read it?" he asked. My attorney answered before I could. "My client will not respond to informal questioning. Communicate through counsel." The lawyer's jaw flexed. He leaned back, then said, almost casually, "The board is aware of this situation." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. But inside, something went very still. Because the board is not a phrase people use unless they're trying to signal gravity or threat. My attorney spoke first. Then the board should be equally interested in correcting the false statement made to Greystone that my client declined transition support. Outside counsel's eyes narrowed a fraction. What false statement? My attorney slid another page forward, our copy of Greystone's voicemail transcript and the calendar invite, including AITA. "We don't know who said it," he said, "but it was said, and it's defamatory." The associate's face changed, just slightly. Not confusion, recognition, as if he'd seen that phrasing somewhere already. Outside counsel stood, slow and controlled. "We will confer with our client." My attorney nodded. "We will hold the document pending the written acknowledgement. You have our terms." They left without taking the envelope. Not because they didn't want it, because they couldn't accept, on paper, how it got to me. After they walked out, my attorney closed the door and exhaled. "Good," he said quietly. "What's good?" I asked, my throat tight. "They're stuck," he replied. "If they admit the shipment, they trigger governance consequences. If they don't admit it, they can't safely accuse you." I sat there, hands flat on the table, feeling the weight of what that meant. They were choosing between saving themselves internally or sacrificing me externally. My phone buzzed once, an email notification, not from HR, not from Darren, from an address that made my pulse slow down in a strange, heavy way. audit.committeeb.chairut. Subject, request for direct confirmation. And the first line was simple. Before we proceed, I need to understand exactly what happened, starting with how that document ended up in your exit shipment. I didn't answer the audit committee chair directly. Not because I was trying to be difficult, because every instinct I had was screaming the same thing my attorney had been repeating for days. If it isn't documented correctly, it will be rewritten against you. So I forwarded the email to my attorney and sat there staring at my kitchen wall, like it might give me instructions. He called me 5 minutes later. "This is what we wanted," he said. "What? The board emailing me?" I asked. "The governance channel," he corrected. "Not HR, not Darren, not legal ops playing games. The actual oversight body. Now the company can't pretend this is routine cleanup." He drafted the response, but he let me approve every word. The tone was surgical, respectful, factual, impossible to twist. It said, "I received my personal items via a company-arranged shipment. The sealed audit committee envelope was inside that shipment. I did not request it. I did not open it in the ordinary course. It was secured immediately. All contact and transfer will occur through counsel, with chain of custody. Then he attached the evidence: photos of the box label, photos of the sealed envelope as received, timestamps, the legal ops email, the unknown number text threats, the doorbell camera image of the courier. No drama, just a timeline. We hit send, and for the first time since my termination, there was a silence that didn't feel like someone plotting. It felt like the room finally went quiet, because grown-ups had walked in. 2 hours later, my attorney's office received a call, this time not blocked, not evasive. It was the company's general counsel. Not outside counsel, not HR, not Darren. The person who only shows up when the company knows it has a real problem. The general counsel didn't greet me. He spoke to my attorney like I didn't exist, which is exactly how corporations try to regain control. "We want to resolve this," he said. "The document needs to come back immediately." My attorney didn't argue. "It will come back, as soon as you acknowledge it was included in the company-arranged exit shipment." In writing. A pause. Then the general counsel said carefully, "We can acknowledge the document was transmitted to your client inadvertently." My attorney's voice stayed steady. "Not sufficient." Another pause, longer, and in that pause I could almost hear the internal debate. Admit enough to retrieve it, but not enough to trigger consequences. Finally, the general counsel said, "We can acknowledge it was included in a facilities shipment associated with his separation." That was the crack. My attorney pushed gently, and that he did not request it. "Yes," the general counsel said, clipped. "He did not request it." There it was. 2 sentences that changed the entire battlefield. Because once that was on paper, the company could no longer credibly frame me as someone who took privileged material. They had shipped it, they had lost custody, and they had tried to retrieve it through intimidation instead of process. My attorney sent a short confirmation back and scheduled the transfer for the next morning. But the story still wasn't finished, because Greystone didn't care about envelopes. Greystone cared about Monday. At 7:12 p.m., the project director from Greystone emailed again. This time the tone wasn't polite, it was controlled anger. "We have received conflicting information regarding your availability and status. We need confirmation of the responsible party by end of day. Auditors are on site Monday. If we cannot confirm escalation ownership, we will pause rollout." That was the cliff, not my severance, not my pride. A client threatening to pause a live rollout because the company had terminated the person named on their escalation path without a replacement. My attorney looked at the email and said, "We can't advise them. You're separated." "I know," I said, "but they're blaming me for it." He nodded once. "Then we correct the record without touching the work." He drafted a reply that did exactly that. "I am no longer employed by company as of date. I cannot provide transition support. Please contact company legal to obtain the assigned escalation path." And then, this was the key, he added one line. "I have not declined transition support. I have not been provided access or an authorized request." Truth, framed cleanly. We sent it. Within 30 minutes, Greystone replied with a single sentence that made my stomach unclench for the first time in days. "Understood. We will route through counsel." The next morning, the envelope was returned. Same conference room, same chain of custody form. This time, the company's outside counsel came in with a different posture. Less threat, more containment. They brought a signed acknowledgement, exactly as my attorney demanded, on letterhead. It confirmed the audit committee memo was inadvertently included in facilities shipment tied to my separation. I did not request it. The company requests return under clawback procedures. They have no evidence of dissemination. My attorney signed the transfer. They took the envelope. And when it left the table, I expected to feel relief. Instead, I felt something colder. Because I realized the envelope was never the only danger. The danger was what it proved about intent. As we were leaving, my attorney got another email. From the audit committee chair. 2 lines. Thank you for the timeline. The committee has initiated an independent review of the separation decision and related communications. Please preserve all records. Independent review. That phrase is corporate for, we're not letting management control this anymore. I sat in my car in the parking lot and stared at my steering wheel until my hands stopped shaking. 2 weeks later, the consequences landed. Quietly, the way corporate consequences always do. First, Darren took leave. That was the phrasing in the org-wide email, nothing specific. Just personal reasons. Then Legal Ops announced process improvements for separation logistics and privilege materials, new chain of custody requirements, new controls. Then, on a Friday afternoon, someone forwarded me a public-facing update from Greystone's side. Rollout delayed, governance review initiated, vendor accountability pending. And then finally, the call came from the company's general counsel again. This time he spoke to me through my attorney, because now he had to. They offered a revised severance package, not the one in the HR folder, a bigger one. They offered a full severance uplift, payment of my attorney fees, a neutral reference letter, a written correction that my termination was not performance-related, and a clause that explicitly stated I did not misappropriate privileged documents. My attorney asked, "Why now?" The general counsel's answer was short, "Because we're cleaning up inaccuracies." Inaccuracies. A polite word for lies. I didn't ask for reinstatement. I didn't want to walk back into that building and pretend it was normal. I wanted one thing, my name back, so I accepted the settlement on my terms. And when I signed, I felt something unexpected. Not victory, peace. Because the ending wasn't me destroying them. It was me refusing to be crushed into their story. 3 months later, I ran into Maya at a coffee shop near downtown. She looked exhausted but lighter. She slid into the seat across from me and said, without small talk, "You know that envelope." I didn't answer. She nodded anyway. "It wasn't an accident." My chest tightened. "How do you know?" She leaned in. "Because the facilities ticket was edited. Someone changed the contents list after the shipment was created. IT caught it during the legal hold." I stared at her. "Who?" I asked. She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. I already knew the shape of it. Maya sat back. "The audit committee didn't like being used." I swallowed. "What happened?" She looked out the window, then back at me. "People got removed," she said. "Not laid off. Removed." I nodded slowly, feeling the final piece click into place. They tried to take everything from me on the way out. My access, my role, my narrative. And they almost succeeded. Because the easiest person to blame is the person who isn't inside the building anymore. But they made one mistake. They handed me the one item that forced the truth into a room they couldn't control. And in the end, the only thing I really took from that company wasn't in the exit box. It was the lesson. If someone wants you quiet, it's rarely because you're wrong. It's because you're standing too close to something they can't afford to explain.